I want to be a leader. I want to be the best I can be. I want to be able to motivate those around me. I want to communicate well for those around me. I know you dropped some really great gems before about spending time with those around you to get to know them, understand what they do and how they want to perform, what they want to try and do. If I want to be better as a leader, what are a few tips that you have? Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Tran. I'm a marketing branding strategist. I help organizations, their teams, their team leaders deliver and execute on the challenges they're facing, from marketing campaigns to market entry activity, all the way through to strategy and planning. If you want to hit me up, check out my website. It's www.andrewtran.asia. You can find out a little bit more about me. You can book time with me. But until then, let's get on with the show. My next guest today is Shankar Rajagopal. He is the head honcho for Mindshare Vietnam, which is a media agency that's part of GroupM, which arguably is the largest advertising media company in the world. And also, it cleaned up in last year's campaign awards. As a leader, he's been in the field of marketing communications for over 20 years across various media and market research industry. He's been recognized as 2019's Southeast Asia Agency Head of the Year by Campaign and runner-up for Office Head of the Year at the Mindshare AMEA and Russia Huddle back in 2019. We had a great chat and we talked about his career spanning from India, China, Malaysia, back to China, and now in Vietnam. The challenges he's faced as country head, especially in China and Vietnam, where there are some major cultural differences. We also talked about tips and advice for leaders, especially multinational organization, when it comes to developing, inspiring, and empowering the people around you. So without further ado, give it up for Shankar Rajagopal. All right, Shankar, how you going?
Good to catch up with you, man.
Good to catch up with you too, man. So, for anyone that's watching or listening, today's episode, I really wanted to talk about adversity, right? And we've known each other for about a year or so, and you've got this really amazing story, and I want to share it with everyone, right? And so, for those who are new to yourself and new to this channel, you're an agency guy, you come from the media background, you're from India, you applied your trade, you built your experience, and you went to China for the first time. And can go back, tell us how was that like?
China then was quite different from the China that is today, simply because it was not as heterogeneous or there weren't as many expats as you would probably see today. The way it happened was, for me, it was simply by chance. So it was one day, it was just a small anecdote. So I was going to the gym in the morning, so I got this call from this number which I didn't recognize. I was like, should I pick up this call or not? I said, okay, fine, let me take the call. And this was from my this guy who would be my boss later. He was calling me for an interview all the way from Guangzhou. I was in Mumbai that time. Mm-hmm. So I just feel that if in case I hadn't taken that call, probably I would not be where I am today.
Yeah.
So it was just so, sometimes, and you're just go by some decisions you have to take by gut.
Yeah.
Not necessarily all the decisions, but sometimes if you feel that something is going right, sometimes you need to take that call.
Wow. Okay. So take us back, because you talk about gut feeling, right? Yeah. Surely you would have consulted with a few people at that time. Go back, what kind of questions were you asking them?
Surprisingly, no. As I said, this particular decision was taken more because I felt that was the right thing to do, in the sense of leaving India and exploring a professional environment outside of my home country.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much very, as I said, decision taken more from a heart rather than from a head.
Right.
And also because there weren't many people at that point of time whom I could consult. Mm-hmm. Because very few people in India at that point of time, especially in the advertising industry, had been in China.
Right.
So there was hardly anyone whom I could talk to and understand, hey, how's it like being in China, moving to it wasn't Beijing or Shanghai, it was Guangzhou, which is relatively smaller.
Right.
So this decision, and I'm not exactly a person who takes decisions based on this gut feeling, but I don't know why I took this decision, but I just feel that, and it was not just the decision that I took, the way I went about implementing it, the way I went about living over there, that made the difference between taking just a call based on gut and seeing it successful later.
Right. Okay. And like kind of jumping along a little bit. So you went to Guangzhou.
Yep.
You went to Stockholm.
That's right.
Right. Then and then you moved to Mindshare, and then you moved to Malaysia for a minute. You came back to China.
That's right.
To Shanghai.
Yeah.
And you headed up you were the MD for the international kind of accounts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go back to that kind of experience. Like, how was that like, taking that leadership experience in a foreign country?
So just before we answer that question, I started my career in market research. So in market research, we have this term called pre and post. So as in, before you do something, you understand how's the situation before and after.
Right.
I felt that was exactly the situation that I was in when I moved to Shanghai. So there was a when I was in Guangzhou.
Yep.
Pre-China, if I were to say so, the China before the digital revolution.
Okay.
And the China, not post, more during the digital revolution. 2007, when I was in Guangzhou, there was no WeChat, there was no Weibo, very, very small amounts of e-commerce. And 2014, 2015, no.
Yep.
It was as if I was living in this golden age of digital marketing, and I was seeing digital marketing emerge.
Yeah.
And as you know, China is actually the pioneer of digital marketing the way we know it.
Right.
A lot of best practices from China are going to the West. It's just the other way around. It's not necessarily coming so much from the West. So what I'm most proud of is that the fact that I was in China when I was in Shanghai. I was heading this account, which was also actually one of the pioneers when it comes to new practices, new trends in digital marketing, be it commerce, be it performance media. So that really gave me, I would say, an edge over other areas, other competitors. So it was an amazing experience. And also the stint that I had in Malaysia for around 4 years in Mindshare, that was also quite interesting because I could have a comparison of how other Asian countries were evolving. They were all in the same direction, but there were various stages. Some were more in the stages of infancy. Some were far more developed, like as I mentioned, China.
Yep.
So I could get a perspective of how different countries are, where different countries are in the stage of development of their digital ecosystem.
Yeah, right.
So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, so going back, so you like you said, you got into this golden age of digital media, digital marketing in China, in Asia.
In Asia,
right?
yeah.
And now everyone kind of follows that kind of practice. Like you mentioned WeChat, like the ability to pay via WeChat, and now you're seeing Facebook trying to implement that several years later. Wanting to do that, and this iteration, kind of fast iteration type of approach that China has. Do you find that I would love to get your opinion. Why do you think China just evolved so rapidly in that short amount of time?
There was a need, simply because there was a decision taken back in the 2000s of not having, or if I may say so, blocking the Western digital ecosystems for whatever reasons. But the point is that clearly China realized that they needed to have their own digital ecosystem. Because in order to sustain and in order for the economy to thrive, they needed to get onto the digital bandwagon as fast as possible, possibly faster than the Western economies. Also, possibly the 2008 financial crisis also impacted them, and they realized that they needed to have as many homegrown companies, as many homegrown tech companies, supporting their audiences, their consumers in this process. So clearly we could see that the government and also the whole ecosystem encouraged the development or emergence of such companies. So companies in China, there is this popular term called BAT, Baidu, Alibaba and Tencent. So all these three companies emerged pretty much in the 2000s. And then in the early 2010s, we saw the emergence of JD.com, and now of course there are many more such amazing companies. So I would say that the decade, the 2000s decade, was the transition year when all these companies emerged with clearly support that the whole Chinese economy and the Chinese consumer gave them, and now they are all world beaters.
Yeah, nice. Okay, I want to touch on more about like the consumer behavior and the differences between, but I would love to like kind of get back to like, you know, your experience working both in India, in Malaysia, and China. Now, like we're in Vietnam at the moment, and you're the head of, or country head, sorry, or Mindshare. You know, as a leader, you know, obviously when you lead in different countries, different cultures, different languages, what are some of the elements, like common elements, that you kind of see when it comes to leadership style that you've noticed?
I mean, one thing that I realized, regardless of where I am, and possibly this will be true even if I were to, let's say, go to Australia or to the West, you can't come with preconceived notions of how things will work. You have to understand the market, you have to understand your audience. When I say audience, not necessarily only those your audiences of your clients, also your own internal audiences, your people. As an office leader, it's your people are your strength. So it is very important that you understand them, again, not just as employees but as people. Understand what drives them, what motivates them, and that's in fact what I did when I came here 2 years ago. I literally spent the first 2 weeks here just talking to people, just understanding them. How long have you been here, and so on and so forth, but also in the process understanding their inner needs and motivations. Why are they here? It's not that they are not talented, it's not that they can't get opportunities out there, they are. But the fact that a lot of them have continued to stay with Mindshare for a long time clearly means that there is something which is attracting them, something which is keeping them here. I want to understand what is it that is keeping them here. What can I do for them? How can we together ensure Mindshare's success? So these are the things which I wanted to understand.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. You made a point to, you know, when you came to Vietnam, you made a point to meet as many people as you could in the office to get an understanding of who they are as a person, and also understand a little bit about their motivation. It's actually very similar to a CEO that you know, that I experienced as well, where, you know, this particular CEO came into the business, the brand itself was going through a bit of a turmoil at the moment, and he brought calmness to it, and how he brought calmness to it was exactly how you just approached it. Like, he spent the 2 weeks, spent the time going on to each floor and just chatting and talking to people. So so that approach, I think, and that principle that you just kind of explained about understanding the people around you is so important.
And if I may add, it is very important to let people know that you have their back. Trust is essential. It's a people industry. If they don't trust you, and no one is stupid here. Everyone realizes that understands if you are genuine or if you're just putting on an act. So if they don't trust you, and they will very quickly, anyone, and I'm not talking specific to Vietnam or specific to Mindshare, any organization, any country, people realize whether you are faking it or whether you are genuine. You're a genuine person. So trust, as I mentioned, is absolutely essential for a leader. They observe you every single minute, and you have to live up to their expectations. You have to be there always for them, and that really makes a lot of difference.
Do you find sometimes, like, there's that humility with ability, which you kind of talk about with trust, right?
Absolutely.
Do you find sometimes, like, with leaders, or maybe inexperienced leaders, they try to be friends with everyone? Do you find like that could sometimes be a bit of an issue?
Yes. End of the day, this position is such that you are the leader. You have to lead people. I would not say manage. So more of a leader position. So yes, while on one hand you need to be friendly to people, you need to, as I mentioned before, you need to understand them as people rather than as employees. But for an organization to be effectively led, you need to somewhere be very clear about what is it that you want professionally, of course, because it is very you would not want to cross there's a very thin line between being friendly and being taken for granted, or people not listening to you just because they feel that you're too friendly.
Right.
So you should know where to draw the line, and probably sometimes that comes through experience. So that's one point that is very important. So yes, you need to be humble always, because it's impossible that you know everything. Yeah, regardless, even if you have, let's say, 25 years of experience across 15 markets, every place, every market, every organization is different, and the dynamics that operate, that work in that organization are different. So you need to learn, you need to sort of unlearn and relearn. But at the same time, you need to be having a basic knowledge, understanding of how stuff works in your organization, in your industry. You just can't come in blind,
right?
Because that will mean immediate loss of confidence amongst your people for you.
Yeah. So how did you learn? Through the years, obviously you've learned through experience, right? But obviously, like maybe at the first instance of when you became that leader, you would have had to face some adversities at that time. I would love to kind of hear some of that.
So strangely enough, when I went to China, both the first and the second stints, the Guangzhou stint as well as the Shanghai stint, I faced adversities both on the personal and professional front.
Right.
Personal front, because I'm a vegetarian, so China was not exactly the best place for me to, go to. While second stint China was slightly better, but I did suffer in the first stint when it comes to food. But second one was obviously language, where less than 2% probably at that point of time of the people in Guangzhou would be able to have a decent conversation in English. But that continued, but I found ways to maneuver around it. But on the professional front, I had to prove my value. So while no one asked me this question, I'm sure if I had been in their place, I would have also felt, hey, what's this guy who's coming in from India or let's say from Malaysia? What does he know about China, about my client, about my this category? I obviously know more than him. I have been in this role for, let's say, the last 2 years or 3 years. What is the value addition that this guy is going to bring to my life, which I don't have? Right. So for me, it was very important that I show some quick wins, to show the value that I'm able to bring to this person, this individual's life, professional life, as soon as possible. As I said, support them, give them the backing, also make them feel that they are I'm there for them always. So for instance, I would not necessarily get into telling them what is to be done and a new way of doing things unless and until there was a genuine need. But where they clearly required me, and this I saw consistently across Malaysia, China, and even Vietnam, they have required me when it came to having senior stakeholder level conversations with the C-suite. So because either they are not confident, or it is probably language issue, or whatever be the reason. So they would normally drag me to these conversations, and it was something which I enjoyed, because I could understand where the CEO or the CMO was coming from, and how could we convert our media conversations into more of a business level or a marketing level conversations, while obviously having the core as media. So this is where I felt that I was immediately bringing in some value to my people's lives, and that's how, in a way, I managed the issue of them feeling that, hey, this guy is an outsider and not sure why I should listen to him.
Yeah. And through the years, obviously, you haven't lived back in India for a long time. You would have had to experience times of perhaps like homesickness. Obviously, like with the food, like being vegetarian and stuff, like that being an obvious kind of element. But I would love to kind of hear, like, did you have people that you spoke to, maybe not on a regular basis, but maybe as a leader you wanted to find a bit of a mentor coming through? Was that something that kind of helped you through the years?
I would say I was quite lucky that I've had many mentors. So in the last, say, 15 to 20 years, But at the same time, I would not say that I've had one mentor whom I've always gone back to or had a conversation with across these many years. It's always been, most of the cases, it's been my line manager or my boss. But I would say, what I would probably advise people who ask me whether mentorship is important is not necessarily speaking. You don't necessarily have to have a mentor in your life as long as you can learn from everything or everyone. I mean, even a man on the street, the way he's behaving, the way he's doing something, it's just about observation. You have to observe that person. You have to see whether, look at him, look at what he's doing, and something you can learn from that person also. So mentorship, yes, it helps on a certain level when it comes to especially taking key professional calls when you want to understand from a more experienced person whether he or she thinks that the call will be right or not.
Right.
But I don't think you necessarily need to constantly keep checking with him on a very regular basis.
Yeah. So it's sometimes like having the option of contacting them, but also being aware of your surroundings, like you said, being aware of your surroundings, that humility that you spoke about before, building trust, but also as a leader, like having that distinction, that line of distinction between like being friendly towards one person but being too friendly where you lose the respect coming through.
So at Mindshare, in fact, for the last few years we have been having this mentorship program across various markets. All 3 markets that we have been having this very successful mentorship program where high potential talents reach out to. There's a program, there's a very formal program, but whereby these high potential talents from other markets select or choose certain senior people in the organization. It could be from different markets. They might not even have ever worked with them professionally, but obviously they would have heard about that person. So through this system, they say that, hey, I want to be mentored by person A or person B. So the organization enables that. So and I'm actually have been the beneficiary of this, both on the as a mentee as well as a mentor, and that's really helped in my career growth also.
That's great. Yeah, that's really good. I know a lot of big organizations have that, and with Mindshare being part of GroupM, being worldwide, you have this massive network of people that you can communicate with.
The fact that we are the not only the biggest from a billing standpoint, but also we have the largest number of people, makes it very important that we grow our talents from within. Of course, we do get some good talent from outside, but first and foremost, it's all about growing our star talent from within, ensuring that they spend a lot of time with us, and ensuring that Mindshare remains at the the forefront of strategic media. So, case in my individual cases, I've been here for 11 years so far, and I frankly never thought that I will spend 11 years in one organization, given my not so long history that I've had with other companies. But I just felt that there was a lot of positives that there was there with Mindshare, which the opportunities that I got, the mentoring that I got, it really made me stay here for long.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That's really, really good. I want to kind of skip ahead. I want to talk about like your thoughts with regards to, Asia, digital marketing, media. Your experience having worked in India, in China, Malaysia, now in Vietnam. Generally speaking, what have you kind of seen from the standpoint with regards to the evolution around digital marketing here in this region?
Specifically, it's quite interesting. So as I was mentioning earlier, each of these 4 countries, I would say, are at different levels in the digital marketing evolution.
Right.
Vietnam in specific is, I would say, has got massive potential. While obviously China is already up there, I would say Vietnam is not too far behind.
Right.
I would say just a few years behind China in terms of the ecosystem developing. It's all because the people are it's simply because of the people. The way the people have really built up the whole ecosystem themselves, learned from, say, best practices in the other markets, be it the West or be it parts of Asia. I just feel that that's the big difference that some other markets in Asia Pacific may not have, which Vietnam has, the enterprising nature of its people, the ambitious nature. That's really something which drives, which is that I can see that the Vietnamese people have this drive to succeed. Yeah, so that really makes me feel that this country has got a pretty good future. Not only in terms of digital marketing, but in general.
Okay. And so you mentioned like with Vietnam, they're only like a few years. You feel like they're only like a few years behind. Obviously everywhere else in the world, like everyone's talking about AR, VR. Do you see that? I mean, do you currently see it right now in Asia markets?
AR and VR is not exactly that big right now, because it was big, say probably 5-7 years ago. Augmented reality, yes, it is part of marketing, the whole pack, if I were to call it. But I would say, especially given all the disruptions that have happened because of the COVID pandemic, I have seen changes in consumers' lifestyle, and thereby their usage of digital touch points, not necessarily only for media but also as a consumer for their in terms of the behavior, purchase or something, which under normal circumstances would have taken at least 4 to 5 years. It's just what has happened is the pace has increased significantly. So for instance, what we saw in the last 3-4 months since March, data has shown us that the amount of the viewership rate, or the time viewed for YouTube videos, let's say, has significantly increased. When people were in lockdown, obviously there wasn't much to do.
About all time.
Absolutely. And then secondly, we also saw that people were spending much more time gaming. And gaming, while probably till last year was more niche, skewed more to younger males, now it is becoming mass. So gaming is a platform which is not necessarily only restricted, and so brands who would normally tell us, hey, we want to think about gaming, but we don't know whether it will suit our audience, we tell them, hey, not necessarily true, because if you're targeting a young woman as an audience, it is there. Because we know that especially the last few months, there has been a massive upswing in the women who have been gaming. Thirdly, being the emergence of e-commerce. It was always there, but it was smaller. Now we see that there are many more categories that have got onto the e-commerce bandwagon. The sales of a lot of categories, especially the as we call it, the essential items, the essential FMCG items, they have really done very well in the last 3-4 months. You could call it panic buying, but what we see is that some other categories have sort of sustained. Though it's early days yet, we don't have much of data to understand, go deeper into it. But we see that the sales have consistently held. So clearly the consumer is changing in her mindset, in her behavior, be it media consumption or be it purchase behavior, shopper behavior. So, and we don't know, and we just feel that probably such things will continue. Of course, we don't know how whether there will be any further health related problems in the near future. But all these things give me confidence that we are really on the cusp of this transformation into an ecosystem which is really getting into the future, faster than we were imagined.
I see with COVID, some of the messaging around it since COVID's happened. Some of the messaging around it's been more, it's more action front, as in, it's more like, how do I the messages have all been around how do I evoke a certain purchase or a certain action from the consumer. Do you find Asia in general, in comparison to the West, do you find that brand messaging is more to do with, say, value for dollar as opposed to the story?
I think Asians in general are more value conscious. Numerous data points show across various studies done show that Asians in general save more. They are more conscious about the money that they have, which is not a wrong thing. This is not a bad thing at all. It's probably cultural, it goes back to history and so on and so forth. But yes, brands have definitely taken advantage of that fact, and they are giving it back to the consumer, to the Asian consumer, providing numerous opportunities of value. Value that necessarily doesn't mean price discounts. Value can be in many ways. Even a premium product in certain ways can give a value to the consumer. It could be aspirational value. So it is all about the value that the brand gives to the consumer. And I would say a lot of both international brands, the way they have tweaked their communication, the global communication, and adapted it for Asian markets, as well as Asian brands, local brands have done it very well. So for example, brands like Vijay as a perfect case, it's a homegrown brand, homegrown Vietnamese brand. Their
Vietjet,
yes,
the airline.
Their value proposition is just amazing. So they've really done a lot of good work in bringing that value to the consumer.
I find like whenever I go to the airport, so Vietjet is like more like a discounted type of airline. It's a value-based airline. Sorry, discount is probably not the best word. It's a value-based airline, and so whenever you go to the airport in Vietnam, that line is incredibly long. They make so much business out of it. They've been able to do some incredible stunts, like marketing stunts in the time that's kind of caused a bit of controversy at the same time. But that is probably one brand that I kind of see, that and VinFast, the automotive company. These two brands have been such over the last maybe 2 years have been doing such great work.
I would say probably there are many more such examples of even of Vietnamese brands, and that is again going back to my point about Vietnam being the hotbed of talent. I just find that as compared to say many other countries in this region, I find the proliferation of Vietnamese brands has been just amazing. The last 2 to 3 years that I've seen, and I've been here for only 2.5 years, but I just feel that the golden period for Vietnam has just begun. With the amount of the brands that have emerged across categories, and they are not just brands for the sake of just being there. They're all market leaders in their respective categories. It clearly shows that the Vietnamese brands, the Vietnamese companies they know what it takes to win over the consumers and to establish themselves. They're actually giving a run for the advertising. I mean the Western brands' money. So that's really amazing.
Definitely.
In fact, 2 years ago, even the conversations that were happening here in Vietnam were quite different. When I came over here, it was pretty much about television and how much GRPs we should be having and so on and so forth. In the last 2.5 years, I see a huge upswing in the kind of conversations around precision marketing, precision at scale, data-driven marketing, obviously e-commerce, and so on and so forth. So this in such a short span of time, I haven't seen this in most of the markets except possibly China. That's why I feel that it is not very far away from China. Of course, the scale is smaller and so on and so forth, but then the people's mindset is quite similar. They are ambitious, they're dynamic, and I feel that I would say Vietnam is on the right track.
And I remember we had a chat, we have multiple chats before we do these videos, but I remember we spoke about measurement, like metrics, right? And I remember back in early kind of China digital phase, you can really kind of, I guess, inflate numbers through impressions and through kind of old school tactics. Have you also seen, you also mentioned the evolution of the way people consume media here in Vietnam? It's been quite rapid. Do you also see from brands, from your clients, that the way of which they measure success has changed as well?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned previously, a lot of brands used to just look at measures of CPMs and even clicks for that matter. They frankly don't amount to much. A, because they don't guarantee any kind of business success. B, to some extent they can also be faked. Because again, many markets have all these cases of fake clicks, and that's a problem with our industry and a lot of industry bodies which are addressing that problem across advertisers, industry bodies, agencies, and media partners. So I would say probably more business metrics like leads, or even sometimes in some cases actual sales.
Yep.
So that's really the direction in which we should be going, and there are a lot of brands, depending on the category of course,
Sure.
who have already evolved into the direction, and a lot of agencies like Mindshare. So who are already cooperating or partnering with brands in providing the business metrics rather than having just a media metric of say a CPC or a CPM.
Yep.
In fact, for a lot of our clients whom we work with, we have those metrics or those as KPIs for ourselves. Of course, we need the support of the clients whom we work with, because it's all about being a partner rather than just saying, hey, this is your KPI and go and achieve it. That's not going to happen.
Yep.
But when we work as true partners, we absolutely have no problems in accepting business level metrics as KPIs, because we are confident that with the scale and with the skill set that we have back in office, we definitely can deliver.
Yeah, nice. So this kind of, I guess, wrapping up when we talk about digital Asia, what do you think of the next? So COVID's already, obviously, we're in the midst of it, somewhat kind of recovering. Obviously, Vietnam's championing the cause.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think in terms of the digital landscape? How, like, we've kind of touched on it in terms of, you mentioned like consumer behavior, the way they've touched on that. What do you think your predictions are over the next, say, like 12 to 18 months?
Wow. I mean, if I would be able to predict correctly, that would be really amazing, because especially during the COVID phase, the joke that goes around is that everyone is coming up with predictions about how things will be in the next 12 to 18 months. It's absolutely impossible to know.
Yeah.
But again, if you were to look at the trends, what has happened in the last 3 months, as I mentioned, there are some clear indications of what is going to happen. So much more consumption of digital media platforms. Television will not go down significantly. It will remain probably stable, but definitely an increase in the consumption of digital platforms, be it online video, be it gaming as a platform, and definitely commerce for shopping.
Right.
Frankly, we've not seen the kind of increase we didn't expect the kind of increase in the number of searches for how-to videos, how to cook at home, how to exercise at home. That was amazing. If you look at Google search trends, that has been absolutely amazing. So some of these things will definitely continue. What will also possibly continue, will increase in size and significance, will be the moneyless transactions.
Right.
So digital wallet,
Right.
for example. So it's quite normal in China now.
Yeah.
So in fact, the last 1 year that I was in China back in 2017, I don't remember many instances when I actually took out money. It was always through my WeChat phone, and that is coming in very quickly I would say in Vietnam, and it is just going to expand significantly as we go into the next few months. So and third would be innovations in the healthcare system. So that's another. So we have been working with some of our clients, and we believe that that's where there is a massive opportunity for a big jump in both the healthcare as well as the education categories for some massive innovations, probably on the back of COVID.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, these are opportunities. These are sectors which definitely will see a huge upswing in terms of the importance.
Yeah, I definitely understand with regards to healthcare. Obviously, people want to maintain some level of safety in terms of what they're doing. Like I also think, and it sounds really, I wouldn't say controversial, but just left field, which is travel and tourism. Like right now it's decimated, it's gone, it's not there at the moment. Everyone's gearing up for it. You see bits and pieces from different publications that are talking about obviously job cuts with regards within each of those industries and everything like that. But then there's also tourism bodies that are looking at ways of which to improve domestic travel, and really kind of pushing that kind of trend. Do you also see from a media perspective, like do you see any kind of changes with regards to that end?
It'll become far more performance driven.
Yeah.
Already travel and tourism has always been very much performance driven, because it's all about the number of bookings and so on and so forth. But it will become, I would say, the importance of performance will be magnified probably 100 times.
Yeah.
Because it's all about recovering the losses.
Right.
The losses that have happened in the last, say, few months.
Yep.
And some more months to go. Don't know how long. Definitely, yes, that will be a problem. But the good thing about Vietnam, A, obviously the impact has not been as bad as probably most of the countries. B, tourism and travel and tourism, while it's important, is not the main breadwinner of our economy.
Yep.
It's still manufacturing. So yes, the minute there is let's say the continuation of the trade war between the US and China, or any other such incident that happens which will impact, or let's say a resurgence of COVID in China, those kind of situations may impact us from a manufacturing standpoint or from an export standpoint. But I would say travel and tourism, yes, while it is a critical category industry, I would say, since it's not the number one industry, like say or some of our neighbors, I would say the fact that the Vietnamese government as well as the a lot of the private sector is promoting domestic tourism, that should help to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Hopefully by the end of the year we should be able to recover to some extent, because that's actually the key period for international travelers to come here.
Yeah, and also I think from a messaging point of view, like it comes, what separates different destination points, the USP is safety.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
I think that how brands or how organizations, how tourism boards use that to their advantage to tell the story, I think is really important. And then obviously having that performance element as well, which will drive the kind of quick actions that are coming through.
Which is where the messaging. So when we talk about personalization at scale, that's basically what it means. You have to serve different message. I mean, this is quite a unique case, but in general, in digital media, in communications, we talk about personalization at scale, which has become the buzzword, but actually is quite relevant, is quite important, because in the age of micro-segmenting, it is impossible that you serve one communication to your entire audience. It simply doesn't make any sense.
Right.
We have large amounts of data, and again in Mindshare GroupM, we really distill the data that we have in-house, as well as what our clients have, also with our partners. We really try to understand the single portrait of the consumer,
Right.
And segment the consumer into various buckets that are there, basis their behavior, not claim data, and serving of different communication, different messages which are most relevant. We have done that over the last year and a half, and clearly we have seen an increase in all the relevant metrics. The connection, the engagement, and obviously the chances of the person being more favorable towards that particular metric is quite high.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. So wrapping up, right? I want to be a leader. I want to be the best I can be. I want to be able to motivate those around me. I want to communicate well for those around me. I know you dropped some really great gems before about spending time with those around you to get to know them, understand what they do, and how they want to perform, what they want to try and do. If I want to be better as a leader, what are a few tips that you have?
I would say remain resilient. Resiliency for a leader is most important. There will be good days, there will be really shitty days. You have to take that in your stride.
Right.
It's impossible that every day will be good, and if you were to if you were to face a particularly bad day, I don't think you can succeed as a leader, firstly. Secondly, have a life outside of work. You need family, friends, dog, cat, whatever you have, doesn't matter. Go for a drink with someone. You need a life outside of work for your own sanity as well as for your people's sanity. You can't be bothering them every single day, even on weekends. That's something that really doesn't help. Thirdly, as I mentioned earlier, be genuine. People can see through you. As a leader, that's the worst thing that you can do to yourself as well and to your people, if you are seen to be insincere. It really doesn't work. So I would say these three values are most critical. The rest, and it doesn't matter which industry you are in or which market you are in. These three are fundamental core values to any leader.
Great. Well, thank you, Shankar. And for anyone that wants to know you more, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I'm there on social media. I'm fairly active,
Yep.
both on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Okay.
Offline conversations, the Starbucks at Huddle.
Yeah.
They stick to.
No worries. Well, look, I'll put all the details in the show notes below.
Yeah.
But Shankar, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
And for anyone out there, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.